Hi, this is Benjamin Rolnik, and when Brene Brown talks about writing, she compares it to the prisoners of Alcatraz looking at the shores of San Francisco and hearing all the people screaming and partying and all the bright lights and thinking to themselves, oh gosh, if only that were my life. And it just adds so much insult to the injury. And last night, I went to the memorial of a really, really beautiful man. And I wanted to tell a story about him today. And yeah, I wanted to share part of his legacy without knowing exactly what I'm doing. I don't know. Well, so today, yeah, I wanted to share maybe two things. I mean, the first is that right now I'm in a place of being in absolute writing mode. Wow, there's so much I want to share and so much that I don't want to share. It's so interesting when I get into a position like this. Okay, well, I'm just going to go for it. So I'm going to tell a story about myself. So growing up, I was really fascinated by spirituality. I was really fascinated by religion. I was really fascinated by the idea of the holy and the idea of the sacred and God and all of that stuff. And I wore all white and I grew my hair out and I wanted to connect with enlightenment. I wanted to connect with spirit, and I wanted to do it from this place of really being a holy person in the world. Wow, Tony! Hey, how you doing, brother? Yeah, I'm straight up sharing today. I have no idea what direction I'm going to go in. And last night, and I've grown up Jewish. That was my religion, but I never really connected with it because I didn't understand the practices. I didn't understand the rituals of it, and the rituals felt totally disconnected from the spirit, which was to connect to some higher source or to feel a feeling. And meanwhile, every time I went through the rituals, I felt totally drained and enervated, and I didn't feel uplifted. I didn't feel energized. And it's been an interesting place for me because a lot of those same renunciation practices that I adopted really early on in my life as a yogi or as in this tradition or that tradition, it's still like they've always stuck with me. I mean, you know, even to the point where, I mean, you'll notice in these videos I wear the same thing pretty much every day. Yeah, unscripted and authentic, totally. Yeah, and I don't know. It's interesting because as I make these videos, I don't know if anybody watches them. I know some people do because they comment on like the first 0 seconds of it. So I have no idea if they get to the actual end of my videos. Maybe like 1 or 2 of my friends. But then there's also the practicing element. But I walked away from this memorial and I was so touched, and I was looking up at the sky and I was looking up at the stars and just sort of crying, and I walked for a few miles afterwards, thinking to myself about, you know, what is my place in this what is my place in this world? Like, what am I here to do? What am I made for? And really wanting to live a good life and to contribute. So I'll tell the story of of Shlomo Schwartz, and Olivia, his wife, told this story late last night, and I'm so touched by it. I mean, I might even shed a tear talking about this. I mean, just such a beautiful man who contributed so much love to the world, so much heart, so much care, so much service. And Olivia, his wife, shared this story about how Shlomo traveled to Hebron, which is a holy city in oh, hey, Benny, how are you, brother? Good to hear from you. Thank you. It touches my heart. And Shlomo travels to the city of Hebron, and this guy Dovin, who picks him up in the car, they start talking, and he goes, "Where are you from?" And the guy goes, "I'm from Atlantic City, New Jersey." And Shlomo says, "Well, I'm from Atlantic City, New Jersey." And they both connect, and they find out that this guy Dovin's father ran the kosher butchery where they bought all their kosher meat, and Shlomo's father was the what do they call him? Moiler, the guy who, you know, cuts off cuts off our dicks when we're younger, the circumciser dude, who circumcised both of them. So they had this spiritual connection from, years ago, and they formed this holy brotherhood. And they go into this city with about 50 different families in it, maybe 500 people tops. And Shlomo's there for, about a week, and he notices that there's this pathway down towards, by the way, I'm totally butchering this story, so if any of his family watch this, please forgive me. but they, he finds this path down towards some temple or something like that. And, Shlomo's, he's kind of older at this point, and he's wondering, is there any pathway? I love you too, Jess. I love you so much. Jessica Winterstern, she's amazing. By the way, anyone who's interested in masculine, feminine dynamics and just straight up vulnerability. By the way, Jessica Winterstern, just a shout out to you real quick. There are a few people in my life who have to pound ideas into my mind. They've got to talk about it about 1,000 times before it finally clicks, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe I should explore that idea. And Jessica would constantly talk to me about Brene Brown. I would talk about Tony Robbins. And Jess would be like, you got to check out Brene Brown. There's something to this whole vulnerability thing. And I was like, no, vulnerability, schmulnerability, like fuck all that stuff. It's all about Tony Robbins. And then finally I started studying Brene Brown. And I was like, oh my God, it's all about Brene Brown. She's got the key to the 21st century. She's it. She's the answer. And that took me a while to figure out. We're all kind of a bit stubborn in our own ways, but at least I can admit it for myself. So thank you, Jess, for introducing me to Brene Brown. And Shlomo's taking this path, and he's like, you know what, there's got to be a shortcut. And his friend Dovin says, yeah, absolutely, there is a shortcut. You walk up these steps, and the only problem is that there's a wall that was built there. Because I think from some, kind of Israel-Palestine conflict, the Palestinians built a wall there, and since it was built at a certain point, the Jewish army couldn't, break it down. Again, I'm butchering parts of this story, but for 10 years, this whole community had tried to bring this wall down, and nobody could bring the wall down. So Shlomo hears about this, and he goes up, he visits the wall, and he's like, oh my God, yeah, there is a wall there. It'd be such a nice little shortcut up, but unfortunately there's a wall, so how do we make it? And he comes back and he's like, oh God, this is really a problem. And the local townspeople had named that step up to the wall, the steps of despair. And Shlomo starts thinking to himself, and he's like, okay, there's maybe something I could do about this. So meanwhile, a few hours later, he comes back and he's covered with dirt. He's got dirt on his face. He's got dirt all over his clothes. He's got dirt everywhere. And he shares with his friend. His friend goes, wait, why are you so dirty? What's happening? And he goes, there was a wall. Now there's no wall. And the guy goes, how could there not be a wall? We spent 10 years trying to fight that wall, and you tell me in 10 minutes you brought down this fucking wall? And he goes, yeah, no big deal. So Shlomo brings his friend, and sure enough, the wall is no more. Shlomo had opened up this whole pathway. And the guy goes, how the hell did you do this? And Shlomo goes, well, I asked some of the soldiers there to bring it down, and they brought it down. And his friend Tobin goes, no, you don't understand. I asked all of those soldiers myself. We've been pleading with them for 10 years to bring down this wall. You just bring it down? How is that possible? And he goes, well, I was talking to Shmuley, and Shmuley was talking to Mendel, and Mendel talked to, Hebron, and we all just kind of got together. And, one of them was like a good another Atlantic Jersey City guy. And we started talking, and I bought them pizzas, and we became good friends. And I told them just how crazy it was that I couldn't walk down this path. And they said, well, you know what? Why don't we talk to Midik, and then why don't we have Midik talk to Yehuda, and then Yehuda can talk to Moishi. And like, sure enough, they called their commander. Their commander came, and they said, well, all right, let's get a 5-pound battering ram and just boom, break down the whole wall. And it was just kind of like that. And I was so touched. I weep by this story. It was so beautiful, and I only heard it once last night, and I was like already in an emotional state. So I'm leaving out probably a ton of great details. But what was great about it is that after the wall came down and the entire town could now enjoy these steps and this shortcut, they renamed the stairs from the Stairs of Despair to the Stairs of Hope. And I just was so touched by this man who, could enter into a town for the first time, and within a week being there, totally transformed the whole place. And I just thought to myself, what a beautiful legacy to leave. What a beautiful legacy to be able to touch, move, and inspire people to come together to bring down walls, between people, to bring down walls between places. And I was so touched and moved in so many different ways, in terms of my own journey, in terms of my own pathway in the world, and figuring out what I truly value and what I truly care about, and just how much I care also about people, and how much I care about ending suffering and transforming lives, and just being a contribution and being of service to the world. And there were just so many things that resonated with me. Like, for example, Shlomo used to always wear rainbow suspenders, because I don't know, if you're not Jewish and you're watching this, it might not make any sense to you. But a lot of the Orthodox front people that would wear, like these big black hats and, these big coats, and, it would be, they're kind of intimidating, to say the least, and, they talk in these big accents, like that, and they're very conservative, and Shlomo would always be making jokes and always be laughing, but he figured that, if he was going to spread love in the world, and spread holiness and godliness, and he wore rainbow suspenders, who could deny that? Who would be intimidated by rainbow suspenders? And he wore a Mickey Mouse watch, and he called it Moishi Mouse. And I think, Mendel, his son, who's now taken over the High Center, the Chabad house that he worked at, it tells stories about at a certain point, they were trying to expand. And he had donors, and Mendel said, well, you gotta, some of these donors that are donating, $3,500, $5,000 to the High Center, they're a little concerned that you're not spending more time with them. So Mendel thought to himself, okay, well, a way that we can make this work is we'll just sort of schedule more time. So he told Shlomo, okay, well, in the morning we'll just schedule your mornings. So, you have breakfast with this donor, and then you have lunch with this donor, and, you'll just be out there helping people. And of course, Shlomo was like, great, awesome, let's do it. And so, Mendel set up his whole schedule. And Shlomo would, after a week, some of the donors started calling Mendel saying, this isn't so good. Shlomo keeps standing us up. It's not really working so well. And Mendel was like, we got a problem here. Something's wrong with this. And he would go to, and he went to Shlomo and he said to him, well, what's going on? And, Shlomo would say, well, look, I was on my way to meet with Dennis, but, on the way, Yehuda kind of stopped me, and he was telling me that I'm having these problems with my wife. So I needed to help Yehuda at that time, and, Dennis can wait. And I just man, I found just that spirit is so beautiful, that he operated in this world in a way of being truly present in the moment. And I was touched in a way, kind of beyond that. I mean, now as I'm going in this video, I don't know how much I want to share, but for the past few months, even for a long part of my life. So really, I'll share it like this. A defining moment in my life came in the during spring break of my senior year of college, and I was studying. I was doing some pre-med classes. I was, basically I had finished my degree in psychology and / philosophy, and I was moving down the direction of my biology and my science classes. And I would sort of had this big plan. I'd be in school for 8 years. I'd become a master intellectual. I'd become a doctor, and I'd become a philosopher simultaneously. So I'd have the credentials and the credibility, so people would take me seriously if I shared something and not just dismiss me as a hippie freak who talked about love and talked about compassion and talked about people coming together, and actually see that I had something of value to share. And during that time, I lived in a house with, I think 10 of my best friends. And they would have parties, and they would have so many things going on. And I probably hung out with, the collective of them maybe 2 times during the whole year. And I just sort of grew farther and farther apart from them because I was spending all of my time studying. I was spending all of my time learning. And one of my friends at the time, Alex Bika, and I, we were really into poetry. We were really into this sort of romantic vagabond type lifestyle. And I just finished Unlimited Power. This must have been a month before spring break. And Unlimited Power was Tony Robbins' first book. Actually, when he published it, I think when he was 26. And by that time, he was already taking helicopters to his sold out 5,000 person seminars. And in it, he talks about how he had his mastermind students basically take their wallets, their cell phones, their keys, everything they had, and just plop them on a table. And as they were learning skills of persuasion, just utilize their skills of persuasion to get from one city to the next city. And Alex and I were really inspired by this, so we decided, okay, we're going to do that for spring break. We don't know where we're going to go. We don't know what's going to happen. But what we're going to do is we're going to start off at his place, and we're going to take our wallets, our keys, our cell phones, everything we have, and we're just going to put it on a table. And, with nothing but the clothes that we had in our backs, for the whole week, just sort of travel and hitchhike and see how far we could get, reciting poetry to people and experiencing life. And it was a really amazing adventure. I mean, I could talk about that for just an hour in and of itself. And just synchronicity that led to synchronicity. I mean, being stranded in places, being rained on, thinking this is the end, this is the it of our adventure, being picked up by, people with names like Davino and Angel and stuff like that. It was just this amazing, amazing adventure, and in so many different ways. But the important part of it was that on the way back for me, I immediately started thinking about Chem Lab and Biology Lab and all of these labs and classes that I was taking. And as the thought hit my mind, I just got sick instantly. And I just was I didn't know why, I didn't know what was up, but I was just oh God, now I'm sick. And not only am I sick, but I've got all of this makeup work to do because I could have spent all of my spring break actually studying and getting an edge on all my classmates because everything's graded on a curve. And I was I've got, an A right now, but, what if everyone was studying? I might go to an A-, and I really like getting 100% on all my tests. Because it's if I didn't get 100%, then I didn't fully know the material. So this really kind of threw off my entire plan. And thanks, Debbie, love you. And this really kind of threw off my whole plan. And what is my point in sharing this? Well, anyways, well, I just really, well, I was gonna go off on a tangent there. I don't want to share that story anymore. So, yeah, I don't know if anyone watched this whole thing, but yeah, I just really wanted to, uh, yeah, I really wanted to commemorate Shlomo and really, I think he was such a testament to goodness in people and an inspiration to me. And it was powerful to me because last night I just had this strong revelation about my life and about what's meaningful, what matters to me, and it's something that I know. It's something that, oh, hey Tony, yay Tony. Yeah, and something, and just sort of having this new revelation about what matters to me and who I am, because in so many ways I think that there's been like two competing parts of my brain. One part is that orange part of entrepreneurship and success, and wanting to be successful, wanting to have a voice in the world, wanting to produce something great. And then really the point of it underneath all of that, which is, to really wanting to serve and wanting to love and wanting to be a contribution to the world and to people. And I started thinking about all of this time and that was sort of the story that I was telling, all of this time that, oh, my ancestors were scholars. Yeah, by the way, that was like my revelation looking up last night at the stars. I was like, holy fuck, I'm a rabbi. Like that's what I am. I mean, it's in my blood. It's in my lineage. It's in my genes, and I can't really fight it. And like just feeling that like pull of destiny, and feeling that pull of dharma, and feeling that pull of the world, but just not being like any part of my lineage. Not resonating with any part of that. But having the opportunity to reinvent it in a way that doesn't look like life coaching, that doesn't look like self-help or anything like that, which I think is just so locked into commerce, but really being something else, being something that is really a contribution to the world. Period. That's it. Just a straight up contribution. Especially as I think about these conscious family dinners and all of these other things that I've created. And really what they mean for bringing people together, what they mean for society, what they mean for love, what they mean for the growth of consciousness. And as I thought about it, I was like, fuck, I mean, I went all the way. I mean, this is deep. I don't know. It's like so difficult for me to share all of this because there's so much in my mind. I was like thinking about Achilles, and for those of you who know about Achilles, he makes this sort of deal with the devil, and he has a choice, and what the fates basically tell him is that you can either stay home and live a happy life, or you could essentially go to war, go to battle, and win immortal glory. And what's fascinating about it is, I think it's in the Odyssey, when Odysseus visits Achilles in the underworld, in Hades. What Achilles says is, I'd rather be a slave on earth than king of the underworld. And Plato later tries to ban this line from humanity. Plato, or at least Socrates, says oh, this should not exist in our republic, this line. And furthermore, Plato and Homer want to Plato and Socrates want to ban all of Homer. And it's difficult to explain why. It's just such a simple line. Like, why would the greatest philosopher, arguably of all time, Socrates, want to ban the Homeric line from the greatest hero of all time, Achilles, that I'd rather be a slave to a pig farmer than king of all the underworld? And I think that it's sort of this sort of kind of history-long argument between transcendence and immanence, between the ascendant and the descendant school of theology and understanding holiness, understanding our place in this world. And why am I talking about that? Oh, yeah, because what I sort of realized was that there's a cultural conversation. You know, there was this philosopher named Oakeshott, and he called it the Great Conversation of philosophers throughout history. And I think that for myself, as a young intellectual, I'm so fascinated by this great conversation of history. I'm so fascinated to participate in it. You know, reading like heroes of mine, like, you know, Nietzsche and Kierkegaard and, you know, Sartre and Camus and you know, Martin Luther King, like, listen, you know, Ken Wilber, like, just being able to participate in this intellectual discourse throughout history. But what I really got from Shlomo's his legacy, you know, the bringing down of the wall, was that, you know, Achilles only exists in history. His immortality only lasts, you know, if you think about it, for maybe a few thousand years. And we have no idea what the next 10,000 years will look like. You know, we think 10,000 years ago, it was the introduction of, you know, agrarian culture, that we had horticulturalism. You know, we had families and societies, like in Mesopotamia, finally settling down and actually, you know, growing things like wheat and creating cultures that could sustain more than 150 people. It's like the birth of modern societies in so many different ways. And what survives from that time? You know, it's like no individuals really, you know, as we kind of go through the time, yeah, like cuneiform develops, and, you know, a person like Hammurabi is you know, kind of remembered in history books for his code and his dictums, eye for an eye, and all things like that. But it's really, you know, history just kind of disappears, it vanishes, and what makes sense is the moments. What makes sense is the present. And I feel like, you know, I've been in this process of since 2008, since literally starting school, of writing and philosophizing and wanting to solve all of these unanswerable problems. And I think what I got was that I could spend my whole life wanting to engage in this future conversation, you know, engage in this conversation around philosophy. And I think that it's interesting because I've been making a lot of these videos, but I mean, none of them really go into the depth of what I'm writing about. I think they're two separate subjects. But it's such a future conversation. It's a conversation of transcendence that really has no purpose in so many different ways. And what really does matter is the connections that we have to the people who are right here, and the present moments, and what we're really contributing in the now. So it was a big revelation for me, and I think that as I think about that, you know, all of my previous motivations, you know, to write something amazing, to write a real work of art, and to spend years cultivating this thing, just kind of all vanished. And I thought to myself, wow, I just want to like tie this piece off, so I'm done with it, it's complete, and I can go do what I really love, you know, what really matters, which is serve people, serve humanity, be out in the world, and not in, you know, the Alcatraz of my writing den, which is a really, you know, kind of it's not lonely because I'm kind of eternally fulfilled, but it's an act of solitude. It's an act of disconnection, which is not really participating on the court of life, but rather kind of manipulating ideas in the ether. And I think we live in a day and age where there are so many people that crave consciousness. There's so many people that want to evolve. And we live in this clash of culture, this clash of values, where so many values are about to come to head. You know, it won't be World War II or World War I or World War III as we imagine, but you know, the World War III will exist within our own psyches. It'll exist within our own hearts as people struggle for meaning and purpose in a life that moves so fast they can't keep up with it, and which, you know, their brains have been programmed to compare relativistically with other people, and now they're competing in a flat economy. They're competing in, a flat society where they're not just looking at, the 150 people around them where they can be significant and they can stand out, but, the 8 billion people who are all competing in a zero-sum game for, sort of the same positions in life. And I think that'll be, it's already a crisis. It's already the crisis of postmodernity and, even modernism itself. And I think it'll only escalate as society accelerates. So I think to be out in the world and to actually, contribute in a very small way, in a very, tiny way, like it just resonates so deeply with me. And just that thought of Achilles, it's like thinking through, like, here's Achilles. Here's the greatest hero of all time, Achilles. He was the demigod of the Greeks. He was like, this is who you wanted to be, Achilles. Even Achilles might have went back and traded his immortal glory for a happy life, a small life, a life of love, a life of joy. And can you just imagine if history had been written differently? Can you imagine if that story had been told from the perspective of, no, Achilles didn't fight and die for eternal immortal glory. He actually lived a happy life for himself. I mean, just how much differently societies would have evolved. I mean, as that being the sort of central myth of Western culture. Yeah, so anyways, none of these thoughts have coagulated, and I'm going back to my cave in a minute to continue writing and reading and thinking. So this was all just kind of like a little pin in it, but it'll be interesting. It's like as I think about my own journey, and I doubt you're now watching, Tony. Now I've went for a long time, so I doubt you're still on this one. But as I think through kind of my own journey in full transparency. This was sort of a really big moment for me, like a big turning point where it was like, yeah, I've had this revelation before. I definitely do not see myself. I see myself as like a 21st century religious person, if that exists. It's like, can you have a religion without God? Like, I feel like that's sort of the religion I follow, so kind of a big turning point for me. So much love, many blessings, and if you watched all the way through to this point, the biggest thing is somebody said at this memorial, he said that, if anything, what a memorial like this should remind us of is not to wait for the moments that we have to come together because someone's dead to celebrate them, but rather to celebrate the people we love now, before they're dead. And my invitation to you is to think about somebody who you care about, and even to make it a daily practice, and to send them love, to celebrate them every day, so that a day doesn't go by without you giving your love to the world. A day doesn't go by without you sharing what's true for you, because we don't know when our end comes. I mean, before we solve death, we're all in a fight against time. And there's never enough time to love, There's never enough time to share beautiful moments. There's never enough time to share joy with those that we care about. Because at the end of it, we find ourselves in the underworld thinking to ourselves, like, what change can we effect here? And we had one brief moment, one brief flicker of a life where everything was possible. And the question is, did we do everything in our power to utilize this one precious life? So much love, many blessings, and give some love. Give some love today. Mwah.